What fluorocarbon line do I use? I get that question asked a lot. So I'm gonna give you the skinny on making sure you have the right line on your reel. And when we talk about fluorocarbon line, there is a difference between fluorocarbon and monofilament. Monofilament is a nylon-based line. Fluorocarbon is a fluorocarbon-based line. Fluorocarbon is much denser. It is much more sensitive because of that density. That is the big difference between mono and fluorocarbon. Fluorocarbon does not have the same rate of stretch that monofilament does. Monofilament has more stretch, but the big difference also is that fluorocarbon does not absorb water. Monofilament line absorbs water. So when people talk about, fluorocarbon line sinks in the water. Well, fluorocarbon line's density is more than water, but it doesn't change after you fish it. Monofilament, it actually gets more, absorbs the water, and then it actually will sink in the water. Now, when it's dry, how long does that last? One cast. So when it's dry and you cast it, yes, it does float, but once it absorbs water, it's kind of neutrally buoyant or probably sinks in the water column. So you lose that portion of it. For the majority of the serious fishing crowd out there, monofilament very rarely gets used anymore. I know a number of pro anglers that don't even use monofilament. I use it very, very, very rarely, less than 1% of the time. Occasionally, I might use it for a leader or some sort of topwater situation. But other than that, I'm using fluorocarbon or I'm using braid. So as we're looking at the fluorocarbons themselves, every manufacturer's got 3 or 4 or more different types of fluorocarbon. I've been fishing with Sunline for a number of years. I was buying Sunline fluorocarbon for 3 years before I had any affiliation with the company. So I don't want to hear about, he's sponsored by, nah, dude. It's the best, period. The only thing that even compares to anything that Sunline has is Tatsu by Seagar. That is really good stuff, but it is off the charts expensive. But it's really good fluorocarbon. Shooter, better value, a little less, every bit as good. The diameters are a little different because it's really, the Tatsu is made more for finesse fishing. Shooter is made for more bubba fishing. Well, that's what we do. That's what I like to do. I think most anglers out there, they're a little more bubba. They're a little more bubba than finesse. I mean, if you need finesse, you can get a Sniper, but we'll get into that here in just a second. But as far as fluorocarbons go, Sunline has got the best line of fluorocarbons. I think it's, you can't argue it, really, to have an entire line of really high quality fluorocarbons. My system is very simple. The majority of the time, I'm either using Shooter or I'm using Sniper. Now, a lot of people want to take one fluorocarbon or one line and use it for everything, and that's kind of silly. It's like saying, well, I'm going to use one rod and just fish every technique. Doesn't make any sense, right? Because we can obviously see different rods have different actions. I got all these casting rods here behind me. They're not all the same rod because I'm going to be fishing different techniques with different line sizes. I need different powers. I need different actions. I need different length rods. I need some spinning. I need some bait casting. Fluorocarbon line is somewhat similar, but I've broke it down to where for the majority of all things, I use either Shooter or Sniper. And I kind of mentioned it a minute ago. The Shooter is more of your bubba fishing. You're flipping. Like if I'm gonna pick up my old cash and flipping stick and have a big old gnarly creature bait on there. I've got 25 or 22 pound Sunline Shooter on there, and believe it or not, 25 pound shooter, I can pitch and that line just sings off of there as smooth as you can imagine. It is really, really amazing when you show people this is 25 pound fluorocarbon. You make a long pitch and you hold your line up and it's just as smooth as silk. There's no coils or anything like that. It just, man, it really is amazing stuff. As soon as I found the Shooter and started using it, I haven't looked back since. I've tried other lines, nothing can touch it. So that's kind of what I use the shooter for. Anything, I mean, even if I'm like pitching around a stick bait, pitching around a smaller Texas rig, Carolina rig, shooter, anything where I'm setting the hook, it's going to be shooter. Now, shooter is a little bit more expensive. It's the premium of premium for Sunline, in any fluorocarbon, for my opinion. But that's the premium. You're not gonna. That line will also last you longer. You're not going to be any bait that you throw and reel, like a crankbait, spinnerbait, chatterbait. That line is going to wear out quicker because you're going to cause more abrasion as that line is going through the rod guides over and over again. And once you get a little dirt on it, then the abrasions, they just get amplified. But if you're flipping and pitching, you're not going to be reeling your bait in with a lot of resistance. It's not going to be causing a lot of resistance against your guides unless you're straight whacking fish. And of course, we all want to do that. But that's what I use the shooter for. I think it lasts a little bit longer, especially if you maintain your guides. I've given that rod tip out before. Clean your rod guides. You clean your rod guides every few trips. You'd be surprised how much longer your line will last. And if you're going to be buying premium line, you can justify it a lot better if you take care of your rod and your line by doing that. Plus, I put a little backing on it, especially when I'm flipping and pitching. I'll put a little bit of backing of just any kind of cheap line, and then about the last 70, 80 yards, I'm gonna have that shooter on if I'm flipping and pitching. Now, if I'm deep cranking or throwing something really far out from the boat, I need a little more of that line, whatever size, diameter it is. But that's one of those things where you can, easy way to do it is to reel up your spool. I'll do a whole nother video on that. Reel up your spool, make a long cast, pull off another 20 yards, and then that's where you want your base to be. It's kind of based on your line size. But so now I want to talk about the Sniper. Sniper is, in my opinion, the best value for fluorocarbon. It's the #1 selling Sunline. They sell more of this than anything else because the price point to what you get is really good. But the Sniper is not Bubba line. It's not flipping and pitching line. You can use it for that, but you just have to back off a little bit. 20-pound Sniper is not quite as big as 20-pound shooter. The diameters are a little bit different, so you got to keep that in mind as you're looking at the difference between the two lines. But the Sniper, that's what I use anytime I'm throwing a crankbait. A crankbait, like this is, sometimes I'll throw it on the shallow one. I'll get to the exception here in a minute. But like I was talking about earlier, crankbaits, chatterbaits. Yeah, that's right. That's a Quiver 6.5 on the back. But that's a chatterbait. I'm casting and retrieving. This is 20-pound Sunline Sniper. That line casts like a dream. Extremely sensitive. I mean, I've still got the backbone to boat flip 5-pounders if I need to, and that's even on the Cash and Chatterbait Icon rod. And then the other time that I'm going to be using Sniper is on my leaders, or if you're not comfortable, like I was for a long time, if you're not comfortable tying a leader from your braided main line on your spinning reel to a leader, if you're not comfortable with that knot, which I was not until I figured out the FG knot, 2 different knots that I used in that sentence. Anyway, that leader material is FC Sniper. I've had amazing results and success with the Sniper as a leader. I love it, especially with that FG knot. And I'll use anywhere from 6, 7, 8, 10, or even 12-pound leader given the different circumstances. But the braid that I use mainly is the X-Plasma. X-Plasma, once I found it, this is 12-pound. This is what I use about 90% of the time as my main line. It is really good, ties great knots. It's supple, it lasts a long time. I don't care, even if you fish a lot, you could have this X Plasma, one spool on one reel will last you at least a year. If you don't fish a ton like I do, it may even last you 2 years, and there's nothing that's going to happen to that. The difference between the X Plasma line on that is it has that plasma coating on it, which means that braided line does not absorb water as much as other braids. It absorbs 0 water for a long time. It's crazy. You can dip that braid in the water and lift it up, and there's no water residue going to be on your line. It's pretty wild if you ask me. But that leader, I use usually on average about a 20-foot leader of the Sniper. So that's the times that I use it, is here on anything that's moving, any moving bait. I'm cranking it. You can get away with Sniper. That's really what it's made for. It's a little smaller diameter. It's very supple, casts really well. Highly recommend that for that circumstance. And really one of the only other exceptions, if you will, to the rule is Crank FC. And that is a line specifically made for shallow crankbait fishing. If you know anything about me, you know Little John, you know Fat John, you know Spro, I've designed those. I love them. I love shallow crankbaits in general. I like balsa baits. I like handmade baits. I like flat size. I like shallow cranking. So out of shallow cranking, as I was showing you before, you can use Sniper for this application, and it is perfectly fine. But if you really want to dial it in, the Sunline Crank FC, there's 2 distinct differences between the Sniper and the Crank FC. The Crank FC has a little bit more stretch. I don't know the exact numbers. It's a little teeny bit more stretch. Not a lot, a teeny bit. And that's one of the reasons that I don't like this for deep crankbait fishing. I do not use the Crank FC for deep crankbait fishing. I want minimal stretch, so that's why I stick with the Crank FC for deep diving crankbaits like the Little John DD 70, those type, 6XD, DT16, DD20, those type crankbaits. I'm sticking with the Sniper because of that less stretch. But when we're talking about shallow crankbait fishing, it's a different type of deal. You're target fishing, you're hitting rocks, you're hitting wood, you're hitting docks, you're hitting stuff with that crankbait, you're banging it around. The big difference is not that stretch. The big difference with that Crank FC is it's got that plasma coating on it. It's got that plasma coating, or plasma treatment is really what it is. Similar to what the X Plasma has. The Crank FC has that on there. It is unbelievable the difference in abrasion resistance from taking a little shallow crankbait like this. If I'm just banging this thing on riprap, let's say, I can bang that thing on riprap for hours, and you run your finger down there right in front of that line, right in front of the bait, just like this right here. You run your finger down there, and there will be 0 abrasions on it. In my opinion, it's amazing that plasma coating repels the water, and it also allows that line to slide over rocks, wood, anything that causes abrasions to your line normally. It allows it to slide right over that, and you can fish it a lot longer without having to retie. To me, that's a big deal. And and then if you hook up with a fish on, let's say 12-pound crankbait line, you hook up with that fish and he's around that log that you threw by, or he's around some rocks, you stand a lot better chance of getting that fish in the boat with that much higher abrasion resistance. So that's really, one of the only other exceptions that I'll use in is that Crank FC on shallow crankbait fishing. I've not really experimented with it for too many other techniques. It is a slightly bigger diameter than FC Sniper, for same diameter line. So just another factor to keep in mind. But I use a lot of that 10, 12, and 14-pound Crank FC on my shallow crankbaits, and even the intermediate 6-8 foot stuff. I use that line as well. So that's the major difference right there. And those are the 2 lines that I use the majority of the time when I'm out there, basically putting my career. I put my career on the line. I put my career on this line. It's a different way to look at it. A punny way to put it, I should say. But here it is. If you have any other questions, be sure to hit me up down there in the comments, and I'll be sure to try to answer them. And if you have any other suggestions for videos, I want to see and hear about those. I want to hear about them as well. Thanks.